Hello YouTube viewers, here we are with Audi troubleshooting. I drove this car, it was totally fine. Did some valve cover gaskets. That's all I did. Car wouldn't start. I've been at it for 6 weeks trying to troubleshoot it. Finally figured it out. But now I know a lot about this car, so I'm going to share that with you so that you can try and figure out how it is. I had no spark, couldn't figure it out, but I did a lot of things and I found everything, and it was something really simple. But let's go over some of the stuff that can be wrong with this car. This is a 97, so it had an Hitachi ECU, but as I found out searching the forums endlessly, a lot of these are the same, Audi and Volkswagen, so these troubleshooting techniques should be similar. Alright, what do we got here that can go wrong? This is the ignition control module. This thing takes a signal from the ECU, goes via this long-ass cable, goes around the motor, these coil packs over here, they're all sort of connected together, and fires them one at a time. I was getting no spark, so there's a bunch of components here which can cause no spark, but we had fuel. The ignition control module apparently usually causes misfires, so these things go bad, and this one was $42 on Rock Auto. Mass airflow sensor rarely goes wrong. If you have a VAG com, they're so awesome to be able to have access to a factory scanner. If you can borrow one, totally get it, because when you get the VAG com, when you move the throttle pedal, it'll tell you voltage, or just cranking, you'll see a bit of voltage on the mass airflow to tell you that it's working. I don't think these go bad that often. This thing does go bad, but usually misfires. The coils, apparently these go bad. This was not the problem with mine. This is for intermittent problems. You can measure resistances on them or just replace them all. Now we get into some more of the ignition components that can cause a failure. Apparently the ECU, on some of them there's relays in here. These can get full of water, I guess. So this one wasn't, obviously it wasn't the problem. On the back of the motor, this is the vacuum actuator that controls the intake manifold from the short to long runners. Behind this is a sensor on the back here, the camshaft position sensor. I have another one. This is an ignition. This is a camshaft position sensor. This is actually from a newer one that has 5 valve heads. There's 2 of these on the back. Basically, on the back of the cam, it's just a plate that rotates around. It's got a little hole, it's just missing a gap. So when it goes around 1 revolution, there's a gap there. These are really easily measured with an oscilloscope. We got a really clear sensor reading from this. Apparently, car won't start. This should give you a fault code if these are bad, but that's one thing can go wrong. They're just on the back with 2 bolts. I tried that, didn't work, because that wasn't the problem. On the back of the transmission is an RPM sensor. It is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Basically, the flywheel is exposed from the transmission, and above it hovers a sensor that looks at the teeth. The VAG com will show you RPM, like how much RPM when you're cranking if the car won't start. So that's not the problem. I actually took it off. It's just covered by a metal shield. The sensor's just in the open, staring at crank teeth. I put it back on. That wasn't the problem. And there's an alignment. It's actually got like screws. You can move it back and forth to get it perfect. I sort of put it in the middle. Below this, so you got your RPM sensor. On the bottom of the motor, very obviously on this side, I'm not going to go under because it's all oily, is the crank position sensor, which measures the crankshaft. It looks like this, because I got another one, that wasn't a problem. They're not that expensive. If this fails, you also don't get start. This was weird. We hooked it up to the oscilloscope. It has a weird sensor reading, but it was readable. This should also do an error code. But this, if your tack isn't moving when you crank the car, apparently crank position sensor can be the problem. Common also is that cam position sensor. And all these little connectors back here, which I have kind of broken off accidentally. So that covers all of these things. Fuses. Fuses are an obvious one, but easily to forget about. On this car, it's on the inside. There's a bunch of main EFI fuses that run on here. Check all your fuses. Underneath here, you got to pull off the dash cluster thing to get all the relays. There's a common fuel pump relay, which fails in there. Mine was totally fine. You can take the plastic case off there and check for corrosion. They're really nice relays. I could smell fuel while I was cranking, so that wasn't the issue. Fuses, relay. And that's pretty much your primary ignition components on this thing. The Audi wants to see all of those things or it won't work. It won't provide spark. Fuel seems to be something different. What did I do wrong? I'm super dumb. This connector and that connector are the same. They're the same connector. They both fit on there very nicely. And these cables, it looks like when this cable was on there, it looked like it didn't fit anywhere else. That bend was perfect to go on there, but it fit over here. So I took this thing on and off over and over and over. I couldn't trace this line out, which goes to the coils, because it disappears behind the back of this sort of type motor. But these connectors were wrong. No codes, no errors, no nothing, no spark. Because they were on the wrong thing. So dumb. Took me so long. You can also, of course, have timing issues if your timing belt breaks. You know, you're screwed, and that won't be why it won't start too. Check compression on that. But that's pretty much it. That's all of the ignition things that I've come to understand how this works. Get a VAG com. They really work. Everyone says it on the forums. They're like Nazis. No, Nazis is the wrong thing to say with German cars. They're like, get your VAG com if you're trying the VAG com, because lots of cars, you don't get a factory scanner. It's not available. So it's pretty rad. I borrowed one a couple times. Didn't really help because I'm dumb. Stupid. The car's been sitting here forever. Couldn't start. So dumb. Anyways, hope you found this useful. Troubleshooting. It's not that different than Japanese or American cars, which I've worked on a lot. But, you know, other than triple square and a million control arms. Why are there so many control arms? They all break. If you found this useful, thumbs up, subscribe, please. If you have any questions, ask me. I don't know. Maybe I know the answers. Apparently, I'm super dumb and I mistake connectors. But I do know a lot about Audis now. Well, a hell of a lot more than I knew before. Hope you found this useful. See you in the next one.